Hi guys, Matt from Pomelo Pictures here, and this is the first in a new form of Let's Play on the channel. And for the first game, I thought it would be a good idea to do Power Rangers the movie on the Mega Drive. Now, Power Rangers is a series that I've covered a lot on this channel, and the two games that I've sort of pointed out as being the ones to play were the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the Game Gear and Power Rangers the movie on the Mega Drive. Now, neither of these are games that I had growing up, although I was a huge Power Rangers fan. But when I was doing the Power Rangers the movie video, I tried to play through the whole of both games, and I didn't really like the Super Nintendo version, but I did really like the Mega Drive version. So what we're going to do today is try and play through that. Now, if I start this here, okay. Now, this actually starts with an introduction to the movie. One thing that I said in the video was that the Super Nintendo version wasn't really anything to do with the movie at all, whereas the Mega Drive version was. Although it's just kind of thrown together a little bit. So we start with just the basic premise of the film laid out in text. But that's definitely more than you got in the Super Nintendo version. Now, if you haven't seen the film, some of this might not make sense because the film and the TV show technically weren't the same timeline. They kind of crossed over a little bit. There were bits that were sort of precursors to future series and bits that related to past series, for example. But yeah, it doesn't always make the most sense, if that makes sense. No, I'm rambling. Okay. So you can play as two players on this, and it's probably easier with two players, as I'll get into when we've played a little bit. Well, I'm going to go with one player. Yeah, so you started off with sort of a background of the Power Rangers and the build-up to the film. Now, what you actually get now is the opening bit to the film where you're sort of introduced to Ivan Ooze, and you're going to how you're going to go play through the game, and ultimately he's the bad guy that you're going to battle, and that's something that the Mega Drive version had, but the Super Nintendo version didn't. For some reason, I think he does make an appearance at some point, but you're fighting normal putty patrollers. Whereas if we go into stage one now, you'll start seeing that we're actually fighting the Ivan's Ooze men. Now you've got all the characters from the film. I think I'm going to start with Tommy as the White Ranger. Now it's worth noting that the characters do actually switch at some point, but I'll get onto that later. So what you've got is this sort of side-scrolling beat-em-up. And as I say, in the Super Nintendo version, you were fighting putty patrollers, whereas in this, you are actually fighting Ivan's Ooze men. So at least that's something that sort of sticks close to the film rather than just the TV show. And it's not the easiest game in the world, but you do have a fair amount of lives. The only thing is these Ooze men, they take loads of hits to go down. So you're fighting these guys for ages. And that's kind of the whole game. You're going through these stages, beating up these guys, and it takes a lot of your energy away. As you can see there, you can sort of pick up power coins along the way that help you. If I don't get beaten down already, I'm actually doing really badly on this. So how many lives have I got? Oh yeah, so you can see up at the top I've got 5 credits. Now they either apply to me as a one player, or if I was to die. If I was to die 5 times, that would be the end of the game. Or a second player could tag in and you share the credits, I think. But yeah, as you see, I haven't even moved past the first screen yet because these. Why can't I pick up that coin? Do I have to punch the coin or something? Yeah, I have to punch it. Yeah, I haven't moved past the first, or I'm about to move past the first screen because it takes so many hits to get these Ooze men. I think they do actually respawn as well. Like if you take too long to move or something, they start to respawn. Come on. So this is meant to be downtown Angel Grove, I assume, although there's no people around. Obviously, in the film, you start off fighting these men in the construction site, whereas that doesn't happen. The stages are fairly generic, as you'll see as we get further on into this. They're not necessarily specific to stages in the film. But then again, they weren't in the Super Nintendo version, or the Game Boy version, or the Game Gear version either. So, as I say, this is probably the closest video game that was released at the time that actually made sense as a movie tie-in. Although there is a strange bit later on that we'll get to in there. I do mention it in my video, but it's basically how they start mixing up timelines. So as I say, yeah, in the Power Rangers the movie video, I talk about how season 2 goes on and how it leads into the movie, but the movie and the TV show are not the same universe or the same timeline. They're not technically canon with each other. So it's a strange choice that this decides to mix the two, because they're not designed to be mixed. In the film, we learn how the Power Rangers get the Ninjazords, and they get the powers of the Ninjetti, but the TV show handles that in its own way. Here we go, we've got Ivan appearing, but we don't actually get to fight him in this. He just knocks us down, and that's the end of the stage. So yeah, in the TV show actually deals with how the Rangers get the Ninjetti powers and the Ninjazords in a completely different way to the film. And all of the actions of the film are just kind of ignored. They transition from season 2 to season 3, and it's just like it never really happened. Now, this is kind of how the story gets played out in the Mega Drive version. You just get these sort of comic book style slides of the film, so you don't actually play through stages of the film. You just get the storyline as a background. So you've got Ivan destroying Zordon, and the Rangers being sent to Thanos, I think it was. That's the net. Or is that the villain in the Marvel movies? Thanos. So Lord Zed and Rita are no longer part of the mission. They're trapped in a snow globe. And Phaedos, there we go. The Rangers are sent to Phaedos to try and find this new power, because Ivan has destroyed the command center and Zordon is dying, and they've got no access to the old powers. I think, do we then get into the next stage? No, okay, so the Rangers get the powers of the Ninjetti to help them on their journey through the jungle to find the new power, which will give them the Ninjazords. And again, it's just talking about things that are in the film without actually showing them, which is a bit of a shame, but it is the Mega Drive after all. It's kind of limited in what it can show. So yeah, you get the screen of Ivan unveiling his own Ectomorphicons. Back to Phaedos, where the Rangers are getting their new Zords and new powers. And then what's the final slide? Zordon contacts the Rangers and tells them about Ivan. With their new powers, the Rangers blast back to Earth. Okay, so now we should be moving on to the next stage, which would be fighting the Ectomorphicons. Have we reached that already? That's the end of the movie. Okay, so there's a digitized version of them in their new suits, even though they're the old suits, but you know what I mean. Is that it? Stage 2, okay. Yeah, so in the storyline of the game, we're now on to fighting the Ectomorphicons. I'm going to go as Kimberly this time. But in the game, you're not actually following the storyline at all. So now we're just in almost looks like Streets of Rage. It's just sort of a street scene, and we've got it's got slightly harder now that there's cars coming. and you do get warned of them with a little beep, although because I'm filming this and filming my audio, I've had to turn the sound off, so I won't actually get that warning, so I'm probably going to get run over a few times by cars whilst I'm playing through this. Oh, you can do a double tap to run. But yeah, as I say, this is not anything to do with the film whatsoever. This is just a generic street scene, and it doesn't even follow the sort of story slides that preceded it, because the story slides talked about the Rangers heading back to Earth to fight Ivan and his Ectomorphicons. Now you're just back to being a Ranger beating up Ooze-men who don't make an appearance towards the end of the film at all. Oh, I've managed to get an extra credit though somehow. So yeah, if I die in this stage, I'll show you how credits work. So basically, if a Ranger dies, you're able to switch you're able to go just get another life as the same Ranger, or you're able to switch out to be a different Ranger. If, say, for example, you don't like how one Ranger fights, although they pretty much fight all the same. Well, that's one good thing about the cars. They actually damage the enemies as well. But yeah, it does take a fair few hits to get these Ooze-men down, and yeah, when there's 3 of them on the screen like this, it can take a while. Come on, Kimberly. They sort of surround you. Yeah, okay, I'm losing life quite quickly now. Where do they get weapons from as well? They didn't have weapons in the film. So at this stage, it's a little bit of a button mash. I mean, there is some tactic to it, as these guys can sort of go a little bit like the kids in Splatoon. They sort of turn into slime and move away from you. You can't hit them when they're like that. So it's maybe that's where they got the idea from. Maybe those at Nintendo were watching the Power Rangers Sega Mega Drive game back in the day and thought, you know what, we're going to turn that into a shooter. Come on. Yeah, see, there's one of the car. I nearly got run over. Come on. Okay, so I've lost a credit now, so I can continue. And yeah, I can choose which Ranger. So I'm going to be the Black Ranger, I think. And and then you're just sort of straight back into the action with a different Ranger. But you can see it takes ages to get rid of some of these Ooze-men because they take way too many hits. And when you do eventually get to move on to the next screen, it's not sort of they respawn, but you get Ooze-men from the previous screen reappearing. Come on. Now, as I'm talking, I'm losing my voice, but I can't. I'm going to try and have a drink. Oh. Button mash whilst drinking. Come on. Come on, Zach. Oh no, I'm not Zach, am I? I'm Adam. Come on, Adam. So while this game is it's not the hardest in the world, you can see why you can you can lose lives quite quickly because you're fighting the same enemies over and over, and it's kind of like an arcade game. I don't know if there was an arcade version of this, or whether this game itself appeared in the arcades and this was just a port of it. But you can see it's sort of got that arcade difficulty to it, and as you start to lose more lives, it's almost prompting you to get more credits, as it were, as in like insert another coin. But I don't think it was an arcade game. I think this was exclusive to the Mega Drive. As I say, it's not like these days where there'd be a game released on the PS4, the Xbox One, the PC, maybe the Switch, and they're all pretty much the same, apart from the Switch being a sort of semi-handheld version. But back in the day, like, the games were completely different on different systems. They're often developed by different people as well. Like, if you try and compare the Game Boy version, the Game Gear version, the Mega Drive, and the Super Nintendo, they're not even similar. They're like completely different. The Game Gear game is basically Power Rangers Season 2. It's not Power Rangers the movie. The Game Boy version, I don't even know what that's meant to be, but it's not Power Rangers at all. It's just they've sort of slapped the Ninjetti Rangers on a generic platformer, or run and gun, beat 'em up kind of thing, and then that's it. Whereas with this, yes, it's just kind of like a Streets of Rage clone, but you do get somewhat of a sense that it is a Power Rangers movie tie-in. Whereas with all the others, there's nothing really. And even though some of them stick to the source material, it's the source material of the TV show, not of the film, which, as I say, is completely different. So it can get quite monotonous. You're just sort of going through this. I mean, this stage has taken ages, and I'm probably not even halfway yet. And you can see they are timed too. So you need to kind of dispense with these enemies quite quickly, but they're not easy to dispense with quickly at all. Come on. I've been on this one screen for ages. I don't actually know what happens if you run out of time. I presume you just lose a life. But I'm going to find out soon. I've only got 10 seconds left to get rid of these 3, and that's not going to happen. Or is it? No, because there's more coming. 5. 4. Come on, 3. 2. 1. What happens? Do I lose a life, or is it game over? Oh, it just carries on. Apparently the time limit does nothing. And is that the end of the stage? No, more Oozmen. It just goes on and on and on. It's not that it's a bad game, it's just sort of, they've sort of artificially inflated it. They've made it longer. Oh, as I get run over. They've made it longer than it needs to be, purely based on the fact that you are just spending ages fighting these Oozmen. In fact, fighting the Oozmen is the whole game, or at least the first half of the game anyway. Come on. And like I say, you get to Ivan at the end of a stage, but you don't actually get to do anything to him. He just sort of zaps you, and that's the end of it. Come on. Oh, okay, that's the end of the stage. Oh, you don't even get to fight Ivan at this end of stage 2. Here we go. Now this is the bit in the film where it's sort of the Ectomorphicons, and I'm guessing this is going to be the fight with not Thunder Megazord. Is it Ninja Zord? Whatever the new Megazord is called. Ah, here we go. Ninja Megazord. There we go. Okay, so you can either be Falcon Zord or Ninja Megazord. I assume you can probably switch between the two. I'm going to go Falcon Zord because I'm guessing he can fly. Okay. Alright, okay, so we're now... Okay, so it's kind of like, yeah, you can see the monorail that was in Angel Grove. Obviously, it was meant to be at night, but... Oh, wow, okay. Did I do that? Yeah, no, that was me doing damage to him. Okay, I thought you got me. So I'm just going to keep mashing buttons and electrocuting this bee. Was it a bee in the film? There was a scorpion and... Yeah, I guess it was a bee, and that's the one that... That's the one that Ivan ends up embodying, and then they sort of fly off into space to fight each other. And they end up winning by sort of kneeing him in the balls, and he gets hit by, I think he gets hit by an asteroid. Is that what happens? Can I fly over him? No, that's the highest I can go. I think this is the right choice though, because I'm sort of slightly above him, and even though he's got those spikes, I should be able to dispense with whatever he's called. Hornitron, is it? Oh, okay. Now they've switched. So now it's the Scorpion one. What's he called? Oh, I haven't got a health bar for him. Does he just keep shooting? Oh god, how am I meant to deal with him if he just keeps... Scorpitron, apparently, that's what he's called. I know what I'm guessing I need to be like in that awful movie with Will Smith, Wild Wild West, where the sort of the bee is fighting the tarantula. Use the fact that I can fly to my advantage. So have I beaten the bee? Is the bee just gone now? Falconzord's taking a beating though with this one. I thought Falconzord was pretty cool actually. I always liked the fighting Zord, the flying Zord. So like Kimberly's Pterodactyl and the White Ranger Falconzord. Those were always my favourite because I thought they were always like the ones that were sort of not overpowered, but they always seemed to be the best ones. And it's a shame like you never really got to see the individual Zords. Oh, have I won? I've won. It was a shame that you never really got to see the individual Zords doing their thing more, because the TV show was restricted to 20 minutes. You kind of tended to see they'd call the Zords and then it would just go straight to Megazord. You never really got to see what the individual Zords could do on their own. Stage 2, Claire. Okay, so that was still stage 2. Ah, yeah, no, this is what I was talking about. So now we got Rocky, Adam, and Aisha on the screen talking about how they first joined being Power Rangers, and it sort of does the blue, blue, blue as a flashback. And now we are in season 2 of the TV show, which, as I say, doesn't make sense because season 2 does not lead into the movie. Season 2 leads into season 3, and the movie does not lead into season 3 either. So this is a little bit strange how it's just skipped, but obviously, you know, it went through the storyline of the movie pretty quickly till it got to the point where it's the Ectomorphicons, and we've just defeated the Ectomorphicons, so now they had to come up with something else. So now it's talking about in the TV show how Tommy has gone from being the Green Ranger into being the White Ranger. So we don't get the Green Ranger in this game, but we do get, here we go, we've got Billy as the Blue Ranger, but now we've got Trini as the Yellow Ranger, Jason is back as the Red Ranger, Tommy is still the White Ranger, Kimberly's still the Pink Ranger, and now we've got Zach as the Black Ranger. So they're sort of reminiscing of when they joined, and now we go back to the original lineup of Rangers, although Tommy is still the White Ranger, they haven't brought in the Green Ranger. So now, this is meant to be a stage from the TV show, and we are back to fighting Putty Patrollers, specifically Lord Zed's Putty Patrollers with those big letter Zs emblazoned on their chests, which makes them blow up into 5 or 6 pieces, which is probably one of the worst design choices ever. If you're going to design foot soldiers, don't make their weakness a massive thing, like almost like a target on their chest. That kind of doesn't work as a thing. So as we go through this, if I remember correctly from when I did the video on Power Rangers the movie, we have another stage later on, which is a little bit like what we just did with the Ectomorphicons. But I think it was, I think the monsters that we're battling are actually from season 3. Ah, here we go. So I can't remember which season these are from, but these appear late in the TV show where there's 3 of them. One's like an ear, one's like one like an eye or a nose or something, or a necklace and an earring or something. I can't quite remember. And then they're sort of 3 in 1, and then they sort of all join up when Rita makes them grow. So this is even more like Streets of Rage now, because you know in Streets of Rage where you have let's go Jason. In Streets of Rage where you have the foot soldiers and then you fight a slightly more powerful mini boss. This isn't a boss fight. It's just like a mini boss, and she's got a weapon now. As you can see, she's got like a sword. So she's slightly harder to dispense than the Putty Patrol. Oh, except there's now, how many are there? 4? Oh, there's loads. Okay, hang on. These seem to be a little bit easier to defeat than the Ooze-men, which would make sense because yeah, I think the Putty Patrollers in the TV show probably were fairly easy to dispose of, whereas the Ooze-men took a little bit more of a beating in the movie, which it's quite good that sort of difficulty. Oh, wasted that one. That difficulty is a little bit different, but obviously in this you have the. I can't walk with it. Okay. I guess I'll just throw it. Oh, I just keep throwing it. Okay. Until eventually. Oh, it's disappeared. Here come the Putty Patrollers probably. Huh? Where is everyone? Ah, here we go. Okay, that actually worked quite well. Okay, wasted that one again. And you can see now the Rangers all have their yeah. So this is the earring one. The Rangers all have their legendary weapons, which in my video about sort of comparing Power Rangers and Super Sentai, the weapons don't appear that much in the TV show. They do a little bit, but you never really know why they have them. So Jason here, you can see he's got the sword. Zach had an axe. Trini had daggers. Billy had a staff, and Kimberly had a bow and arrow. And yeah, you don't really know why they have those things or why they are those specifically. In the Japanese show, it does actually have an explanation because they're not, teenagers that have just been selected by Zordon or anything. They are actually ancient warriors. So those were the weapons that they used as warriors. So it kind of makes more sense in the Japanese show. But yeah, it still meant that the US show still used it to sell toys basically. So every time you saw a Ranger toy, they'd usually have the weapon with them because they'd have their power blaster and a weapon. The only one that did sort of get here we go. Here's the 3 together. The only Ranger where you've got a sense of really why they had the weapon that they did was with the Green Ranger, because obviously that had sort of a flute in it that could control the Dragonzord. Oh, come on, I've got 3 bosses in one, come on. And I've thrown that thing all the way over there now and I can't get to it. And I just destroyed it. Ugh, come on. Oh, I'm just going to pause it there. They're not easy to fight 3 in 1, especially when they all have weapons. Come on, come on. Am I down to 2? Or down to 1? Oh, you're down to 1. Okay, come on. Oh. I don't actually... Oh, okay. I'm going to go Billy. I don't actually remember what this leads into after you defeat these. I'm assuming we go into a Megazord battle. Come on, one more hit should do it. Okay, so that's that defeated. So that should be the end of stage 3. Which is... And... Yeah, okay, so rather than Rita, it's going to be Lord Zed that grows the monster. Yeah, okay, so she sort of combines into one, I think, and then we are going to do a Megazord battle. Yeah, so now we got Thunder Megazord as opposed to Ninja Megazord, so we got White Tiger Sword, White Tiger Sword and Thunder Megazord. So that's from season 2 of the TV show, because obviously the Dragon Zord disappeared, and we got the White Ranger with his Thunder Tiger Zord, which is controlled by the dagger, which I showed in the Power Rangers episode that I did. And then we also had the Thunder Zords. So these are actually the Zords from Gosei Sentai Dairanger, which was the 17th season of Super Sentai, which is completely different to Zyuranger. It actually had nothing to do with it. Well, actually, I'm battling all three. It had actually nothing to do with the series that Power Rangers was built around. But obviously, Power Rangers has always used Super Sentai footage and continues to do so. So obviously, they needed to come up with a way of, using the footage that they had. So they just started using the White Ranger suit, which is from Dairanger, but they carried on using the Zyuranger suits from Sentai, but just switched to the Thunder Zords instead. So they changed the Zords but kept the suits, as they'd sort of built up this. They built up the brand of Power Rangers, and people really liked the dinosaur thing in the West, so they didn't really want to mess with that. So they, rather than changing it all, they just sort of stuck with it, which makes sense. I always felt that the Zyuranger suits were the best, and the sort of Dinozord thing was the best concept in Super Sentai. Even though Zyuranger might not have been the best season. So it makes sense that they did that, and obviously the White Ranger suit was close enough to... Let's go switch to Thunder Megazord. The White Ranger suit was close enough to the Zyuranger Mighty Morphin era suits that you didn't really feel that it was out of place or that it was from a different season, even though it was. Okay, so that is stage 3 clear. So that is meant to be basically an episode from the TV show with those monsters. I can put a clip of what those monsters look like on the screen whilst the stage clear screen is up on here. So now I don't actually know what this leads into, because I think when I was capturing footage for the video, I actually died on that boss battle. So I'm actually doing better already than I did last time. So let's have a look what this leads into. Due to Bulk and Skull's foolish behaviour, 3 Angel Grove teenagers and a teacher are kidnapped by Guldar whilst chasing the runaway carriage. Okay, yeah, so this is kind of... That's not quite how it happened in the TV show, but it is a little bit. So now we've got Aisha, Rocky and Adam being held captive by Guldar. So presumably now in stage 4 we are going to go rescue them, and they'll go into the transition. Let's have a look. Go into the transition from Jason, Zack and Trini into Rocky, Aisha and Adam. It was actually handled really weirdly in the TV show. Basically, what I think stories kind of differ slightly, but I think what happened was when the actors that played the original lineup of Power Rangers signed on, they weren't part of a union, and they weren't paid particularly well as either. I remember I met Walter Emmanuel Jones, who plays the Black Ranger, and was talking to him about some of the merchandise, and I was getting a copy of the Game Boy game signed by him, and he was saying he'd never played it. They were never given copies of it, and they weren't paid particularly well either. So the last thing that they wanted to do was go and buy their own merch. But yeah, basically, I think that they weren't paid very well, and they weren't part of a union either. And when they pushed for that, they were basically just written out of the show. It's probably slightly more complicated than that, but that seemed to be the premise of it. They asked for more money, and Saban were just like, yeah, we don't need you, and just wrote them out. And it's actually handled in a really sloppy way on the TV show. They get some extras to play the 3 characters that are leaving, and they sort of have them in silhouette form in a sort of sunset with some bad voice acting, and then they do sort of, you know, a little bit of the behind the shoulder with again bad voice acting, with someone trying to do Trini's voice going, but Zordon, we can't leave now. And it's a weird premise of something like they're chosen to go to some future leaders of America peace conference, UN kind of thing. I don't really know what it is, but you can tell it was just sort of thrown together. And yeah, they dress up 3 extras as the Black, Red, and Yellow Ranger, and then they do this transfer of power, and they never remove their helmets, like, so you can tell it's not them. So it is handled in quite a sloppy way, but I think fans just sort of accepted the new lineup. As you know, Rocky, Aisha, and Adam were still pretty good, and it kind of did away with that weird thing of, again, I talk about it in my Super Sentai video, where there was this weird, I don't know who made the decision or how they thought it would be a good idea, but everyone knows the joke of they made the Black Ranger black and the Yellow Ranger Asian. So when they came to the new lineup, they kind of fixed it, but they basically just switched it around. So the Yellow Ranger was now black, and the Black Ranger was half Korean. So you've got this. So you've now, rather than an Asian Yellow Ranger, you now had an Asian Black Ranger, and rather than a Black Ranger, you now had a Black Yellow Ranger. It was all just a bit. It was like, do you want to make it any more obvious that you were just doing the old switcheroo on the screw up from the first time around? But anyway. And in fact, actually, I think it was Adam, he ends up being one of the sort of longest serving Rangers, because he appears in loads of series of Power Rangers, because he was in, not only was he in Power Rangers Zeo, he kept making appearance later on as, I think he was kind of like a martial arts teacher kind of thing, and sort of almost like mentor to some of the new Rangers. Let's go Trini. I haven't been Trini yet. Obviously, Tommy ends up being the longest serving Ranger, but yeah, Adam ends up staying in quite long. Aisha gets written out of the show in a really weird way. Basically what happened was, when they ran out of footage, in season 2 and 3 they were shooting a lot of their own footage, but they were still relying on Super Sentai footage. But when they eventually ran out, they transitioned into Power Rangers Zeo, but they thought the best way to do that was to come up with some storyline where everyone is turned into kids, and they have to search for the Zeo crystal, and then they transition into Power Rangers Zeo. And for that series, they used a different Super Sentai series footage and made these really weird alien rangers. They're sort of water-based Aquitian rangers or something. Really awful costumes, really awful voices. It's like really bad series. It's not even classed as a series. It's like series 3.5. It's not classed as its own series because it's only like 6 episodes, I think. And in that, they sort of go on the kids go on these sort of spirit quest kind of things. And Aisha's character, although it's not the same actress who plays Aisha, it's a child actress. She goes to Africa, and there's this nomadic tribe that are there, and they sort of help her find her Zeo crystal. But there's all these lions that are sick and dying, and she decides that she wants to stay because of her knowledge of animals, which I guess I can only assume she means, knowledge of big cats that she's learnt from the saber-toothed tiger, even though she's only used a robot saber-toothed tiger. I don't know, it's all a bit weird, but basically they send the black girl back to Africa, which is an awful, awful thing to do. I mean, of all the things that you could have done to write Aisha out of the story, why on earth would you assume that it was okay to send the only black character in the film, in the TV show, essentially back home to Africa? I'm not making that up. It's not like, oh, it just so happens that she's African or whatever. She is sent there, and she says, you know what? I think I'm home, and it's sort of implied that she's related in some way to one of the elder women in this nomadic tribe. So they kind of went through the storyline of basically going, yeah, Aisha's not just African American, she's actually African, and we're going to send her home to her tribe. It's like, you couldn't even begin to get away with that these days. Like, I don't even know how you could go into a sort of TV pitch when pitching a new season and go, yeah, this is what we're going to do, and everyone be like, okay, yeah, that sounds okay. Send the black girl back to Africa. Yeah, that sounds fine. And they even do it. This is what was really weird. They even made the Red Ranger Native American. I mean, not quite, but Tommy, he was the Green Ranger originally, and then he becomes the White Ranger. And then when they move into Zeo, he becomes the Red Zeo Ranger. But before that, they decide to make it so that his brother had been raised by a Native American tribe, and Tommy's spirit quest is done by a Native American, and he's led by a Falcon, and obviously he had the Falcon Zord before that, and it's just all sort of implied that Tommy's part Native American, and then they go and make him the Red Ranger, and it's just like, firstly you make the Black Ranger black and the Yellow Ranger Asian, then you swap that round, but then you send the Yellow Ranger, who is now black, back home to Africa, so to speak, and you make the Red Ranger Native American. And the Yellow Ranger that replaced her, they didn't just replace the Yellow Ranger with another Ranger, as it were. They actually swapped the black actress that they were implying was from Africa, an African tribe, with literally someone from an African tribe. And it's just, I don't know how they thought they were ever just going to go, yeah, that's fine. But anyway, it is what it is. And obviously, all the Rangers like Jason returns eventually, not just as the Red Ranger, but he appears as the Gold Ranger in Zeo. I go into more detail about it in other videos, but it's just a really weird part of Power Rangers history that has this just really strange racial overtones, and I never really understood why that was, and I never really understood how sort of widespread it was until much later in life. There was always the original joke of, oh yeah, the Black Ranger's black, Yellow Ranger's Asian, but I never really realised that they just carried on the trend until much later. God, there's a lot of putty patrollers on this level. They just keep coming. See, this is the thing that I was talking about earlier. This level is actually not that long. It's just that they've thrown so many... Oh, that's game over. They throw so many enemies into it that you eventually just... you just end up losing because you can't compete with that many enemies. I never claimed to be any good at video games, but that gives you an idea of what this game was. It's not the best game in the world, but it probably is one of the better Power Rangers games. But as I say, if you're sort of into Power Rangers and you want to play these games, this one is one of the best, but also I'd very much recommend Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the Game Gear. Not the movie game, the actual original game. Probably just play it on an emulator rather than on the Game Gear, because it's Game Gears aren't that easy to find these days that are actually working. But yeah, as I say, this is the first of a new form of Let's Play that I'm going to be doing. I plan to do a lot more of these, and this is kind of a test to see if it works. So I've probably rambled way too much on this video, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time for the next video. Until then, next time, guys, I'll see you later.